Hello and welcome back everyone. So in this section we actually be going to apply what we learned in the previous section, that is the REST API. We learned how to actually build a REST API and connect it to a MongoDB database and how to add entries, delete entries and all of that stuff. And in this section we're going to apply it to build a login and registration API using something called JSON Web Tokens, and we'll get into what it is and everything. So without any further ado, let's get started. So let's fire up the terminal. I'll just move into my desktop and I will create a folder called auth. I'll cd into the folder called auth and I'll do an npm init. Alright, now so there's it. I will open VS Code in here and I'm going to be going through this part pretty fast because we've already learned this in the previous section. So node-mon index.js and we'll also give it a start script saying node index.js. Alright, we'll fire up the terminal. We'll do npm install express and all of that. We'll need all of that, and don't ask me what all those are right now. You'll be learning what all of those are throughout this section. Also, we'll install node-mon as a dev dependency. We'll clear it and we'll exit it now. So after that is done, we will set up a server. We just need to actually set up the server. We've done all of this. We'll import the .env, the cors, so now we're going to do app.use cause. As you may have noticed, I'm not using body parser anymore because Express actually has that feature in it. So instead of requiring body parser and all and then doing a body parser dot JSON or something like that, we can just do express.json and that just works. We also should write a .env.config here. Alright, we have to create a file called .env and give it a database URL, and we'll paste the URL from this database which we had created earlier. So it'll be something of that sort. And this password, if you remember from the previous section, I had created a password for it. So now I'm going to do mongoose dot connect process dot env dot database underscore URL comma, and if you remember we had these options: use new URL parser as true and use unified topology as true. And as this returns a promise, we'll do a dot then and a dot catch. Alright, we'll do an app dot listen, and we'll do a process dot env dot port, comma, console dot log server is up and running. So now all of that has been done. So with that, I can actually test my server. Before I do test it, I'll actually give it a port here, and the port is 3000, and I'll do an npm test, and it says server is up and running and connected to database. So everything is fine now. So now that we have actually successfully set up our server and connected to our database, we will create two folders. The first one is called routes, and the second one is called model. So now we'll create a file in model called user.js, which will basically define the schema of our user, and we'll create a file in routes called auth.js, in which we will write our login and registration route. Now in the user, we have to create a schema for it. So first of all, we have to require mongoose here, and we'll do const user equals to new mongoose dot schema, and my user. So well, I want my user to have a name, and we'll put that required as true and type as string, and I'll just copy this here, and an email which will also be true and the type will be string, and a password which will have the same properties. And we'll do module dot expose, obviously, mongoose dot model users comma user. Alright, so we've got the schema already. In here we're going to do app.use /API /register comma require routes auth. Perfect. We'll come here to auth, and we'll now we'll also require the user schema which we had created, so that we can actually query a database with that. Model user. Perfect. We'll do a router dot post /register comma module.expose equals router. Now in our request, the body of the request, we want the name, email and password, right? So now what if the email is not a valid email, or someone does not give a name or anything? So there has to be a way to validate it, right? So to actually validate it, there's a package called npm install @happy/joi, and this package makes it very easy for us to validate stuff, and I'll show you how. So in our main directory, create a folder actually called validation.js, which will store all the validation, and here we're going to do const jy equals to require happy/jy. We are going to create a function here called register validation. It's going to take in one argument. We're going to create a schema here, so it'll be jy.object name, which is a string basically, so jy.string name has to be there, so it's required, and that's it, I guess, for the name. For the email is the same thing as above, but here it also has to be actually an email in the valid email format. That, and I just paste this here too, required, and we want the minimum password to be of 6 characters in length, so we'll just do that. You could keep that 8 or 15 or whatever you want to for security reasons, and we'll do return schema dot validate data. Now we're going to obviously export it. Module.exports dot register validation equals to register validation. Great. We will actually come here and require this equals to require validation. Now we're going to do actually pass our request.body into this register validation function, so const error equals to register validation request.body, then we will see if error then we will do return this dot status 400, which is a bad request, dot send error. Now this is it. I want to actually tell you how it actually shows an error and how we can actually extract the correct error message from it. So for that we will have to actually do an npm test. It says router is not defined. Well, we kept this as express and not router, so we'll write this as router here, hit save, and it should work now. Yeah, it works. So now we'll actually come here, and we won't give it a name, email and password, anything like that, and we'll just send it right here. This is cannot post /API/register. Of course it's supposed to be like this, it's supposed to be user. Well, now it should work. Yeah, now we see we get the message name is required, but we get a pretty nested sort of JSON with arrays and all of that, and we really need to just get this message from inside here. So it actually is in the details of the error, and this details is an array, and at the array there is a 0th position, and at that 0th position there is a JSON, and that JSON has a message in which it says name is required. So we'll come here to auth, we write error dot details at 0 dot message, hit save, and we actually send it again. It says name is required, and it is because we haven't provided it with anything as of yet. So now So now here we're also going to check for something called an existing email. So we'll do const exist equals to await, and since now we're using await, we have to use async here. Await user dot find one. We actually didn't create anything, so we'll just do this. Name, email, password equals to request dot body, so that we can get all the name, email and password from it. And the condition we can pass where email equals email. And if the user does exist, then we will return rest dot status 409 dot conflict dot JSON. Actually, I wrote conflict because the HTTP status code 409 stands for conflict, and error user already exists. Well, so this will check if there is any user with the current email ID which is being registered, and if it does exist, then it will just return saying the user already exists and there's an error. Now, after we've done all these checks, we can say const new user equals to new user, and the name is the name, email is the email, and the password is the password. Const saved user equals to new user dot save, and we will await it because dot save returns the promise, and we'll do rest.json saved user like that. Alright, we'll actually wrap all of this in a try catch block, because if there's any error we can catch it using catch. So alright, and we'll just copy all of this and we will paste it in here. Let's save. Now this does look fine, all of it. Let's see if it works fine. npm test, server is up and running, connected to database. We'll come here, actually we'll go to the body and we'll go raw, and we will provide it with the body in the correct schema. So the name is John Doe, email jd.example.com, jd@example.com, anything which is the valid email. Password should be anything longer than 6 characters. I'll just put the name John Doe here. The server is running, and we'll hit send, and we get back the user details with the ID, and when the ID is generated, it means the database is updated. As you can see here, that's perfect. However, there is a big issue with this. So in here in the database, the password is stored just as it is. So if an attacker is actually trying to steal something from the database, it's very easy for him. Once he gets access to the database, he will be able to find all the user's password. So we need to add some sort of security to this, and that is why we have to hash passwords. And there are a lot of ways to hash passwords, and there are a lot of packages to hash passwords. However, we are going to use a package named bcrypt rust wasm, and that is the fastest package, so I'll show you how to use it. Const bcrypt equals to require, this is bcrypt rust wasm, says const bcrypt equals to bcrypt.new, and you can put in any number here. It's usually people use 10 or whatever, but whatever we use has to be hidden.env.salt rounds, and we'll go to the .env file and we'll put salt rounds as 10 here, and here actually in environment variables all of it is stored as a string. Alright, so we actually have to convert this into an integer, and here instead of storing the password we'll do bcrypt.hashsync, and we'll give the password here. Perfect. So now we will start the server again, make sure everything works. We will delete this entry from the database so that we can test it again. So we'll send it again, and we can see the password here is somewhat hashed, and you can't understand what it exactly is, and you don't need to, because that's the entire point of it, that any attacker is not able to identify what this actually is in its raw form, and he'll have to go through another hell lot of effort to actually decode this. So I guess this is it for this video. In this video we learned about how to create a registration route. In the next video we'll be diving deep into JSON, web tokens and all of that stuff, and how we can create a login route. So see you in the next video, and thank you for watching.